Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yakubu Massa. I'm a palliative care physician based in Milan, Italy. It's my pleasure, obviously, to co-chair today's webinar together with Catherine Oliver. So thank you to EAPC. And this webinar is organized by the EAPC Research Network Junior Forum. For those who may be less familiar with it, this is an EAPC initiative dedicated to supporting early or mid-career researcher, and by this way, we are all able to promote learning and networking in palliative care research. So the EAPC by the Junior Forums aim to make research more accessible, support to collaborative or work across setting and disciplines. And since we'll talk about conference-related skill today, I would also highlight that the research network and several Junior Forum members will be at the EAPC Congress in Prague 2026. So I think that this could be an opportunity for networking and interaction also with senior colleagues. But coming back to today's webinar, it focuses on a very relevant topic. So how to design a good scientific conference poster, because as we know, to communicate complex research is not easy and requires a specific skills. And for this reason, the webinar provides a guide to poster development. I think also that this is a perfect timing, especially for those preparing poster for the EAPC 2026 Congress. I'll now ask Catherine to introduce herself and our speaker for today. So go, Catherine.
Thank you. So I'm Catherine Oliver. I'm a university teacher based at Sheffield University in England, and I'm also a member of the Junior Forum and steering committee that we have here. So it is my privilege to welcome our guest speaker today, who's discussing the topic that's really relevant and important for early researchers and those wanting to just improve your skills in research and how to pass on information to others. So our speaker today is Dr. Yakubu Salifu, who is a nurse and palliative care researcher who completed his PhD in nursing at Nottingham University in 2019. He's a lecturer in palliative care at Lancaster University and co-director of Lancaster Africa Research Hub. He's also a senior fellow in Advanced HE. Dr. Salifu's work focuses on reducing palliative care disparities, supporting family caregivers, and understanding cultural responsibilities to chronic illnesses, men's health, and compassionate communities. He's passionate about translating research into real-world impact, and this led him to co-lead and co-found Compass Ghana, where he serves as the CEO. A huge welcome to you, Yakubu. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. So let me share my slide. Let me know if you can see.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here this afternoon to kind of share some practical tips with you how to develop an effective conference poster. And I believe perhaps some of you might have, applied for the EAPC conference. So perhaps it's a very timely sort of exercise to have. So I'll kind of quickly look at what really, matters in terms of, using a poster. But just before that, maybe you may want to put this one in the chat. How many of you have attended a large conference, so that we kind of get a fair idea. If you have, you could put that in the chat. So the big question is, why do posters, matter? And posters matter because it's one of the ways in which we present scientific information to the public, the same way we do for, using kind of journals to kind of publish our work. However, posters are very unique way such that it is very brief. So unlike, journal articles where you may have about 5,000 words to kind of, express yourself, a poster will kind of be much more briefer. And also it's a kind of opportunity to come into face-to-face with people during conference. So it's really, really important to really understand what it means to be able to communicate and pass on information to other people in a much more, simpler way, and also in a very engaging manner as well. Another important thing that we need to be aware of is that, in such large conferences, we have people coming from all walks of life, and it is really important to pitch your information such that it will be very useful for people, and whilst avoiding some of, some cultural connotation that may not be easily understood by other people as well. So, as Catherine said, I'm a lecturer here. So as usual, the teacher in me, I thought it would be really important to have some kind of objectives for this session. So it is my sort of, wish that by the end of this session, you should be able to understand some of these tips and how you can apply them in designing a clear and, visually engaging poster. Also, you should be able to kind of communicate research effectively to international audience. So those of you who have attended EAPC conference before, this is a conference where you have, nearly, more than 1,000 people attending. And to effectively engage with this kind of, audience, you need to really pitch your poster in a way that will attract people who are usually very busy and also have a very competing interest in what poster to read and at what time. So the very first tip that I want to share with you is that you need to know your audience. You know those people that you're presenting your work to. And by knowing your audience, what do I mean? It is not about, knowing the audience by their name, but it's about knowing the audience, who they are, what background do they come from, what level of, educational attainment. That will be, very useful in pitching your information. And of course, for the EAPC conferences, is done usually in English, but, you need to be aware the sort of the medium of communication is that there are some conferences in somewhere. Canada, sometimes it can be a combination of French and maybe English. So you need to kind of know all these things in order to present information that will meet the needs and the aspiration of those people attending. So the first question that you need to ask yourself is, what should the viewers take away? And you may also want to, or what do you want them to start a discussion with? Are you trying to share a method? Are you sharing something about the findings of a study? Or is the focus about, recruitment or collaboration? What is it that you want your audience to know? So it is really, really important to, right from the onset, let the reader or whoever is coming to participate know what you have to present. And I think that will be really, really helpful in communicating your information to them. The second point that I want to share with you is for you to win people's attention quickly. And those of you who might have attended conferences, large conferences before, you realize that, the whole array of posters that are available for people to, meander their way through to have a look. And usually that is between maybe lunchtime or breaks that are relatively short. So the implication is that you need to be able to present a poster that will have that kind of a quick hook to, grab the attention of people to your poster. And here again, the key message that you want to convey need to be very, very evident, either, in the title or maybe the way you've designed it. But I'll swing back to that in the subsequent slide to talk more detail about that. One other way that you can do this to win people's attention within 10 seconds is to, is about the design of your poster. So if your poster is about maybe a cancer care or whatever, or maybe about how services are, arranged, you may want to think about what image can best represent what I'm communicating, so that will help with a very striking graphic to, hook the attention of your the people who are looking at the posters. The third thing that I want to share with you, so this is an example before I move to the third point that I want to, share. So one way of dealing with a poster, I know that before an abstract is, accepted, there is a lot of scientific, inquiry that has gone on. You've done a robust work that you want to share. So you may have a whole lot of array of information to share. And sometimes at the initial stages, it might be very difficult to think about how to present that. One way is to kind of, gather all this information, just throw them on the poster, all the sort of relevant things that you think will be needed, just throw them on the poster, just gather all the information there, and now think about how to organize that. So the picture that you see there is, a kind of a contrast between before and after. So some of the things that will help you to think about the organization of the content into clear session is that maybe if you've kind of done a review, or maybe you are presenting an empirical work, you may want to organize them into, the background, the aim, the method, research, results, and conclusion. You may want to use diagrams to present large text that could take, a lot of space within the poster. Or you may also use, an image that could kind of portray the message that you're sending, because they say that, a picture tells 1,000 words. One other way of doing that, so for instance, if you are presenting a systematic review, we all know that reporting a systematic review, it may require a lot of text to do that, in reporting the sort of work that has been done, how the databases were searched, how it was analyzed, the number of studies found, and how you did the inclusion and exclusion criteria. One best way of doing that is, representing majority of this information with a Prisma flow chart that will carry the information to the reader in a much more, simplified manner. The third tip that I want to share with you is about the title. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of, having a very powerful title. As some of you may know, I also work for a charity called Compass Ghana, which developed from my PhD work. And I remember one of the titles that, of one of the publications that I did was a direct quote from the participant who were being cared for within the home context by, family caregivers. So one of the participants said, "My wife is my doctor at home." And that kind of encapsulates, how the care was being done within the home context, everything by the participant's wife. And that kind of represented most of the information that, I was trying to publish. So that became the title. And I cannot, mention the number of people who have, contacted me and asking questions about how I came about that title, and that led to a lot of people reading. And in fact, some of those people who joined forces with me to kind of form Compass Ghana, that was the very article that they read. So it is really important to craft a title that matches with the rest of the poster, so that it will be very, 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 projecting the information that you're presenting to the audience. And the title need to be very brief, because people are looking at the posters from a distance, and they are just glancing their eyes through the posters. So you need to be able to create a powerful title, and sometimes it can be in a form of even a question, or it can highlight the sort of contribution that the work is doing, or it may highlight some of the key findings, just like in the case of the research work that I did publish. And it must be understandable to non-experts. Sometimes we try, in order to kind of present a work that maybe we are on top of our area, we may be presenting information in a much more non-specialist language, and that may sometimes kind of prevent the way people will engage with the poster. So have that in mind, so that the title and the content of the poster should be at the level that people will understand. And here it kind of linked back with the very first tip that I talked about. Knowing who your audience are is really, really important. And for in science, and the information need to be internationally relevant, especially in conferences such as EAPC, that has a lot of people from all over the world. So I just gave some examples of what a good or a bad title will be. So sometimes some of the titles are rather too vague. So for instance, observation in healthcare settings. What exactly are the observations about? And healthcare settings, if you talk about healthcare settings, that is a very broad area. It can be, in a hospice context. It can be, within hospital. Even we can have, community healthcare settings. So which of the settings and what observation? So you can see that the very first title is very vague, and perhaps it may not invite people to read beyond the title. So they will just walk past your poster. So the second one talks about improving nurse-patient communication through a digital reminder system. So you realize that such a title, gives a lot of information about what exactly is being done, and within what context. And here is looking at nurse-patient communication and through digital information. So people who are interested in any communication, nurse-patient interaction, digital, palliative care, or maybe anything digital, they might be hooked to your poster. So that is one example of that. So the next tip is the use of colors. And that is where the whole thing can get tricky sometimes. You need to be aware of the color contrast. And here I've provided on my right here some of the examples. So for instance, if you have a red background, of course, red text cannot be, cannot be seen clearly. So red background, we go with a white, text. A white text can, go with a black background. And if you look at yellow, it can work best with, black, but not maybe white. And, and so on and so forth. So you need to be able to understand the choice of the colors, so that it may not kind of mask the way you want to present your information. And here again, I am aware that sometimes some people will want to use colors of their institution they want to be, brand ambassadors, which is good. Lancaster University, anytime we do get the opportunity, we want to use our colors and, in order to kind of, sell our brand. However, you need to understand that, what the colors and the contrast that they go with. So it is critically important to understand this so that you not present information that will be very, difficult for people to read. The next tip is about the application of rules of a good scientific writing. So I wouldn't kind of, stress too much on this, because by the time you are invited for a poster, your abstract has already undergone review. So the reviewers or the panels are very much, they appreciate the fact that it's a good enough, writing to, present at a conference. So remember, the fact that you are presenting a poster doesn't also mean that it has to be presented in a way that will not be unscientific. So try as much as possible to align your poster presentation such that it could kind of convey the information. So in effect, the posters are not the summaries, or is not, a manuscript. It is a unique way of presenting information. So if looking at the diagram, mostly your introduction is about, if you are presenting a work on, for instance, an empirical work, the introduction is about the sort of broad overview of the work. What is known in this area, what remain unknown, and what are the gaps in that area, and why is your work really important? And you can articulate all these things within, in a sentence or two maximum, because this is a poster. You don't want to write too many, words, text. Then the other thing is that method. So how does the method, matches with the sort of gaps that you found? Why is it that this particular method is the most appropriate way of unraveling the sort of research question that you want to, explore? And what are the findings? And what is the implication of this finding to the wider audience? So it's kind of like an inverted, triangle, facing each other. So you start very broad, you come very narrow, then you go broad again. However, because a poster will not, you wouldn't have the room to present so much information, you need to decide that along all these areas, what are the areas that I want to project within the post? Is it about the motivation? Is it about motivation? Is it about research question? Is it about the method? And most often than not, the method need to be brief. People might, unless it's a methodological, poster, people may not necessarily be very interested in the method used. A lot of information on that. But what did you find? And what are the clear implications or conclusions? The next tip that I want to share with you is about the use of interaction and the unique, which is one of the unique strengths of, a poster. So unlike maybe a manuscript, a poster, you have the person stand by the poster, you have opportunity to talk through your poster with somebody. You have sometimes, you may want to kind of also present some avenues that people who are very busy can, read the poster later on. So do you have any QR code that maybe people can scan and go and sit somewhere as they have their lunch and, read through? Do you have some physical handouts for people to, take along and read? Some people, they prefer maybe hard copies to, digital one because of maybe sight or maybe reading things on a screen may not be very easy for people. So have all these things in mind. And this is one of the example of the posters that I did. And here you can see the information presented with, a Prisma chart, key themes. And this is a while ago. Perhaps if I'm doing it now, I will still even cut down some of the, text at the background, the aims and the method to just make it much more, appealing and much more interactive. The other information that I also want to share with you, which is also very critically important, is the layout. And earlier on, I said I'll swing back to this. So the layout or the format of the poster is really, really, really important. Human brains work in a very, unique way. So if you're presenting the information to somebody, because a poster is much more of a visual storytelling, so you should present the information in a very logical way so that people can easily follow. You may want to use numbers, you may want to number so that people know that from here, from 1, I'm going to 2, from 3, because sometimes where people have, session within a poster, you read that way and you logically you think that I should move right. You read and no, you realize that no, that is not it. That is part of the findings. It's not introduction. Then you now struggle to know which place to read. So you may want to use numbers to signpost the person to the sessions. You may want to use arrows. You may also want to use color code. A lot of people are quite happy with that. So that it will kind of signpost them naturally to the way you want them to read it. And as I said earlier on, do not write so much text because it can really, really interrupt people's, reading. Use, text as sparingly as possible and try to use, images, charts and the sort of thing to present information much more quickly. So this is an example that I wanted to share with you about some of the visual mistakes that a lot of people, make. Sometimes very tiny font size, less than 24, 24. So I know EAPC, they do provide a guide, the sort of the text that you need to use, the shapes, the dimension, and when
Okay, it looks like Yakubu's screen's just frozen for a little minute. So we'll just wait for him to come back and join us. So hang fire just a mo, it might be just a signal issue. But don't forget while we're waiting, please, if you've got any questions that you're thinking of as you're going through, please do add them to the chat because then we can post them on for you. I hope so far you're finding it really helpful and hopefully Yakubu's going to join again in just a mo. I think he's going to try and rejoin by the looks of things. Good, I'm glad you're finding it helpful. It's one of those things, it's knowing how to do it, isn't it? While we're thinking through things and going through it. Good. What things are people thinking of in general? What's your overall impressions and questions that you've been working through as you've been thinking about poster presentations? If you could put your questions in, that'd be great. Good question, thank you. So we'll pose that as soon as he comes back. That is a great question, thank you. Yeah, tools to create. And I know that's something a few of us have been thinking of. It's good to have some tools out there and make use of them, because sometimes it's a case of looking rather than just trying to reinvent the wheel. How many of you are doing posters for this EAPC? Or any other conferences?
I'm copying the questions.
Lovely, thank you very much. Good question, Caroline. Thank you. How to present qualitative data in a poster. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to look at your themes. I know from my personal experience. And one of the reasons why Yakubu's been doing the session is because he's offered me an awful lot of help and support with creating some of the posters that I've presented at previous EAPC conference. So I know from personal experience that he's great at looking, and it always amazes me how much of the content that I try and put in that he tries to strip back to make it more succinct, more focused. Well done, Samantha, for your acceptance of the EAPC conference. And it looks like we have Yakubu back.
Hello. Yeah, my apologies. I don't know what happened.
Problem.
My laptop has just... My apologies.
No problem. I've just been talking about how great you are at posters in the meantime and saying how great your help's been with mine. So they've just been putting some comments in. So let me know when you want to restart.
That is fine. I just hope that maybe it kind of continue until the start of the program. My sincere apologies.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I think this was the slide that I went off. So avoid the use of large blocks of text and excessive colors and overly detailed, chart as well, to kind of avoid a lot of clusters. And once you present the poster in that, a very nice way, it will invite a lot of people to come ask a lot of questions. So I just thought I needed to share with you, there are some visual toolkits that will, help people. Some palettes are available, high contrast shapes, bullets, and as you can see on this, slide. So the most important thing is you have to be very consistent in the use of icons so that it doesn't, unnecessarily put a lot of distraction on the poster. And I've already talked about the use of institutional colors. It can be tricky, but know which color, contrast kind of work. The next tip that I want to share with you is to keep the content concise, very simple. Is there a way that you can simplify something? Half is the same thing as 2/4 or 3/6 or 4/8. So here, the most important thing is that if you cannot explain it, in a very simple way, then it means that you don't understand that, and that is, Albert Einstein. So you need to replace chunks of paragraphs with either a diagram, an icon, and that will help you to project your information. The other tip I want to share with you is adding your personality, and that is me in the picture. Be welcoming, smile at people so that they can come to your poster if you're standing by that. You can add, some kind of professional photo, a little photo at the bottom, people can engage you. You have your maybe email address there so that the whole conversation is not about the time that you're presenting the poster, but even after, the poster session is over. So here you can see myself and Katie, who works for Compass Ghana. We have a lot of A4 sheets available, with a A4 sheet of the posters available to kind of engage people, so that even if people cannot, stand there and read, we just hand it over to them to go. And, you can see that, smile, just be like a marketer, in a market, everybody is trying to sell their goods, invite people, catch their eyes, and they come to you for engagement. And now there are some templates from some website that can, help you. You can get a poster template, in terms of the layout, the design, and you kind of modify it. And I find that very useful as well. And there are some color palette generators that can also help you to know which color works with, which text. And of course, there are a number of QR, code tools that are available that you can generate so that people can scan your work and they can have access to your poster and read it in their own time. Okay, so this is one of the posters that we did. And here again, if I were to do it again, we wouldn't put a lot of information, but sometimes it can be very tricky. You have so many information to put out there. And if you are not very careful, you become a bit clumsy. But here we did our best to present the information using, different colors, using chart, pictures, and that will help. So just to kind of summarize, know the purpose of your presentation, know your audience well, try to capture their interest within the shortest possible time, either through the title, the design, the layout, and the posters have a unique strength such that you are available to provide more explanation, unlike a manuscript that you've published in a journal. So do stand by the poster. Sometimes it's tricky to, it's a little bit hard to say this, but sometimes somebody just hang a poster and that is the end of the story until it is time for them to take down the poster. And that is if you even ever find them to come for the poster. So do try and make time to stand by your poster so that you can have some useful conversation with people who come around. Have a checklist, as you do, you kind of take it, and those that you haven't done, you come back to it later. And this is to let you know that the poster design is not a day's job. It takes time. So try as much as possible to, start in time so that you can produce a very nice poster. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. So one of the other things that I would say is that for an EAPC conference, you need to be very, very aware of the design consideration. It's a very multi-international conference, multicultural. So the way you present the information need to be as clear as possible to prevent any ambiguity. So in this diagram, depending on where you're looking at things from, somebody may say it's a duck, or somebody will say it's a rabbit, or maybe both. So try and present the information in a way that will be less, ambiguous as possible. Avoid specific cultural idioms that other people may not understand, and use universal symbols as well. So this was one of our posters. I think it had an award. It was presented by Madeline. It was a work that we did about caring across generation. It was a systematic review. And indeed, you can see that the poster is, clearly, laid out, and it kind of presents information at a glance. And also, instead of presenting maybe the findings in large text, we kind of decided to present it using a diagram. And I think it was really, really, really well received. A lot of people who came around to have a discussion with us did inform us that it was really one of the areas that kind of, drew their attention. And that is Madeline there with the award that she got. So thank you very much for your attention, and my apologies for that technical glitch. That's one of the, the challenges of working, online. I am an in-person person. So I'm happy to kind of take your questions now. So if you're fine, I can stop sharing for now, and I can pick your questions.
Thank you so much, Yakubu, for that session. Really helpful, and it's great to see the comments coming in the side. practical guidance on how to do posters, something that sometimes we know how to do research, or we're learning how to do research and understanding the processes, but how to translate that into visual, how to make it so we can pass on that information to others. That's really important, that we get the message out and get our research out to others. So we've had a few questions in. So one of them was, can you recommend any tools about creating presentations? I know you've talked about a couple, but is there any like particular ones that you found helpful?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the, the area. In most of the sciences, they may, there are some practical bit, but the most common side that, if you Google sample of, poster, if you want, you may want to add the area. If it is sciences, social sciences, you may have some kind of, templates and a couple of them. Then you also need to kind of, based on the sort of message that you want to convey, and to see which of them might be, much more closer to the sort of thing that you want. Then you pick them and adapt. In some institution, for instance, so with Magdalene, their institution, they have a framework, a template, and Lancaster too, we do have a template as well that we work with. So it kind of really depends if your institution kind of throw it down your throat, you have no option than to use that. Other than if you have the liberty to choose to just a simple Google, you can get some of the template and play around with it.
Yeah, it can be really complex if you want it to, can't it? But it can also be quite simple, like using like PowerPoint, etc., that can help to construct things. Next question we had it in is, how best do you present qualitative data in a poster?
Brilliant. I think you should also be very familiar with this. So with here again, I will still swing back to the presentation. What aspect of the work do you want to project? Is it the findings? Is it the conclusion? However, the reader will need to understand how the whole thing came about. So you may want to highlight a little bit about, the problem. What is it that you looked at? What were the gaps there, and what is the, the need for your research? In a maximum of 2 or 3 sentences, short sentences. It shouldn't be, paragraphs and paragraphs. Then what was the aim? What was the research question? What method did you use? How did you analyze that briefly? Then when it comes to qualitative research findings, most often than not, we do present them supporting it with a quote from participants. So you may want to find a very creative way of, representing the
I think we've briefly frozen again. But yes, I know the question. I know what Yakubu was going to say, because we're doing it together at the moment for a poster that we put in. So making sure that when you're using a quote, that you're making it linked to the themes, etc., so it makes sense to the reader. If you've got abstract quotes in, it needs to link into something. So I'm just looking through some of the other questions. We've got some about font size, etc., which I know Yakubu's mentioned, and Kathy's kindly put on the presenter guidance for the EAPC, which is great. So I'll share that again in the text so you can go back to that. And during his presentation, Yakubu was saying about making sure your font isn't under 24 size, just so it becomes a bit more visible. Sometimes for me, I found it quite helpful printing the biggest size I've got as well. So it's one thing to see it on a computer screen, but then to see how it translates slightly bigger, and does it actually fit? Does it look right? That's something that I've found helpful. I'm not particularly tech all the time, so I like to see something and just get an idea of what it's going to look like. Ekamo, have you seen any other questions that you think we could quickly answer? Otherwise, I think we might have to pose them later.
Maybe what is standard size of poster, but we have already responded, because the presenter the guidance of EAPC have all the information. And I see that there is or there are maybe two questions about AI that is very linked to the tools. So AI tools, there is Yakubu, and if you heard me,
yeah, sorry, this is really becoming embarrassing now.
Not
I don't
a
know,
problem.
my computer wants to shut down and I'm preventing it from shutting. I don't know why this time of all moment. Yeah, so as I was talking about with the qualitative work, the key thing is that sometimes you may want to present it with quotes from participants. So because this is a poster, you may want to use very, very, light quote, not chunks of text. You may also want to present the quote, in a way that will, take majority of the space. So you can want to use some, a diagram to kind of represent, each of the quote. Sometimes maybe you have about 4 or 3 themes and sub-themes. If you have about 12 sub-themes, of course, you may want to decide not to represent all the 12 sub-themes because it will become very, messy. So you may want to kind of show one quote, across each of the teams, and that will be one way of presenting that.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. We've also had one in about use of AI. So is there any AI tools that you could recommend that you've come across for posters?
Yes, so I'm a little bit rubbish when it comes to AI. So recently, one of my, co-workers told me about Copilot. They said there's something called Copilot, but I think when I found out it cannot generate a number of slides, or it can just do, if you're doing even PowerPoint, you do one at a time. But most of this AI, I don't know whether it will be able to give you the editable format, because if it's not editable, then it becomes really difficult. But I think there's a way around it, the use of AI. But I will always encourage that maybe the end product should be something that is editable in PowerPoint, so that at least the areas that you think doesn't represent what you want to do, you can now modify it over and over again.
Yeah, I think from a university perspective, it's always good to check it. I think sometimes we're finding with AI that it's great for certain things, but it needs to have that visual eye on it to really check the quality of what's coming out. And maybe use it as a starting point if you get stuck, because sometimes it's a bit of a sticking point. Where do I begin? But then make sure you're putting your own slant on it to make sure it's saying what you want it to say. It's expressing that point that is going to get across to others. And it has got a habit of fabricating some information as well, isn't it? So it's worth checking that. Thank you. Another thing that's been put on, linking onto that one, is about creativity. Someone's kindly put on and said, I find myself wanting to be creative as it catches the eye and spikes interest, but I'm not sure how creative is appropriate. Good question.
Yeah, so it all kind of links back to the audience,
Oh, I think he's wanting to shut down again. It's always the way, isn't it? When you want your computer to work, it doesn't. So creativity. And I'm kind of adding in a little bit here, but just thinking about making sure the message still gets across, that if you're thinking about backgrounds, make sure it isn't too much of a contrast, that it isn't too busy, that if there's something there, that it's not interfering with the main text as well, and that it's quite a logical approach. There's a lot of really good examples of posters that have been produced, and it's good to look at what works and what doesn't. Yakubu's giving you some good examples of ones that have been done that he's been involved with, and just seeing how they're structured. Any other questions that has come through?
Do we include the reference list? This is a good question.
Yeah.
And how many of them? How many of them?
And how many of them?
Yeah.
I think I would always go back to the guidance of wherever it is you're producing your poster for. So if you're, some people use a QR code for references if you think that's appropriate. But certainly go back to your guidance and have a look. It's surprising how few references are often put on posters. Often if there's an image that you've taken from somewhere, make sure you've referenced those appropriately. I know last time I put in a image that I'd taken from somewhere, and so I put on a reference. Hello, just talking about references.
Yeah, I've joined through my phone. My laptop has decided to, restart very shamefully.
So yeah, question
so
about
I think somebody asked
posters.
about, how creative can they be?
Yeah, I think I've kind of had a go at answering that one. I wondered whether you'd have a look at the one which is about adding references to a poster. How do you do it, and how many references are appropriate on posters?
Yeah, I think that's a very important, question. So this is a palliative, for instance, for the EAPC, this is a palliative care conference. So maybe if you've designed a poster and, you've quoted from WHO about, definition of palliative care, that kind of thing, that is a little bit universal. So I wouldn't recommend, putting that one there. But if you kind of, reference a very good source from a very nuanced area, maybe you're doing something around decolonization and palliative care, you're doing something masculine, something that is, not a lot of people will really have access to, then roughly about 3 or 4 references at the very bottom, not massive. And perhaps this is not a method paper, so that if you've mentioned that you've used Brown and Clark, in your analysis, you may want to cite. If you have space, fine, but I wouldn't recommend, using references that are not very, very, unique to the poster that you're presenting. The bottom line is to kind of make the poster as, presentable and as neat as possible without making it more messy. So have a think about that. But if you were to use any reference at all, I recommend not more than 2 or 3 for a poster.
Yeah. Someone's made the suggestion of using a QR code for their reference list, which I've seen before, and it's worked quite nicely to have it. So you're acknowledging the work, which for a researcher quite often we like to have acknowledgement, don't we? But not taking up space on the poster, which is quite limited. Okay, any other questions? Ekmo, have you seen any that have come through?
Maybe do you use PowerPoint, but there is, we are, no, we have already responded. There are a lot.
What about your first question? You've got a question that I've seen.
Yeah, maybe to also to conclude, I don't know, but I prepare one question that is, what would you advise a junior researcher to prioritize first, the first thing to improve the impact of their poster? One thing to say, one message.
Yeah, so it's all kind of, the main focus of doing a poster is, carrying a message in a very simple way to people. So first of all, decide what single message from your poster that you want people to, take away. And you can use maybe highlighters, you can bold it, you can, make it a very, clear one. And I've seen posters whereby even people deliberately have a session like take home message, and they write 1 or 2 sentences under that, so that at least if you have no time to read the poster at all, maybe just glance through the, take home message. And that will be really, really useful. And I think EAPC is doing a fantastic job. Most of these, posters are also in digital form that people can, have access to. But your presence by the poster too is really, really, really important, because as you know, it's not all the information that can, be presented on the poster. And that is a real opportunity for you to kind of engage with people and to talk about the sort of things that, perhaps you couldn't present. And sometimes, depending on the aim of, attending the conference, it's a very good opportunity networking with people for collaborative research, you may realize that somebody is working in a similar area that you may want to collaborate. I've seen people, meeting their potential examiners in conferences. I've seen people, meeting their potential employers, even in conferences, and potential collaborators. So look beyond just the poster, which is a fabric, and to kind of present yourself, there for that kind of engagement is really, really, really important.
Catherine, I think.
Go on.
I think maybe Jakob can't put a message in to chat because of how he's connected. But what I can do is to just briefly give him the microphone.
That would be great, please.
But he needs to unmute himself. He wants to say something. He's actually now lowered his hand.
Okay. Yakubu made a really good point there. My poster enabled me to do Viva prep. So I felt much more ready for doing my PhD Viva because I had a poster and I was able to talk about it. And it got me in the swing of talking about PhD work and prep for that. So I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, so it's okay. I will round up the session unless anyone's got any questions, last minute burning questions to raise. But if not, thank you so much, Yakubu, for joining us and sharing this information. Really, really helpful. And I'm sure it will get a lot of us thinking and being a bit more creative in future. And please take note of the things about the Junior Forum, and we'd love to join you and hear information about, hear back from you about what you want to do. And remember, if you're coming to the EAPC conference, we've got some events on that we'd love to welcome you and talk to you further.
Thank you for having me, and my apologies again for that.
Easy happen. It happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Always when you don't want it to.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you
my
all
contact
so much.
information is there. If people want to, ask questions, I'm happy to, respond to that. That's fine.
Brilliant. And thanks. Thanks everyone for joining and for giving us your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you in Prague. Very exciting, not long now.
Yeah.
Take care all.
Thank you. Bye.
Can I just add that Babita has put information on the chat there about joining the Junior Forum and the newsletter. So if anybody is interested, please do check on that link. And if you're coming to Prague and you're interested in joining the Junior Forum, there is an